Afternoon, everybody. Jim McCauley here today. So this is going to run a little bit like last week's. Both Patty Mulvihill, our executive director, and Kevin Toon, our communications lead, are out today. So this is going to be a lot of listening to Jim today. So I'm your legislative director, and I'm filling in, as I mentioned, for the other two folks who typically run the show. So before we start, a couple of quick housekeeping issues, and hopefully I'm going to keep my voice here through the next 45 minutes to an hour. First, if you haven't done so yet, please make sure that your microphone is muted. Second, we'll end this webinar promptly by 1 o'clock, but my sense is, given the agenda we've got in front of you, we'll end up earlier than that. So also, please update your screen name to include the city you represent. There's instructions on how to do that in the chat. Here's a quick overview of what we're going to be covering today. So House Bill 3962, this is the TLT flexibility. Jenna Jones is unfortunately not able to make this today. She's got a little bit of laryngitis and voice is in a much worse place than mine is at this point in time. Scott Winkle's portfolio, Senate Bill 610, Measure 110 reform, as well as Senate Bill, sorry about this. Actually, it's not a Senate bill. Next one up is going to be House Bill 3883. We're going to be taking a look at that one too. Scott, unfortunately, is not able to make it. He's in a work group with OGEC, so he will likely not be making this. And then the final piece that we're going to update folks on is going to be TRIP 2025. This is the transportation package for this session. So we'll stick to the normal Friday call format. Hold all the questions until the end. If you don't want to forget, feel free to drop that question into chat, and we'll do our best to get that lined up and answered before we get off the day. So a couple of overview pieces for you. Today is a good day. Anybody involved in government affairs and the lobby work that we end up doing, we look for deadlines. Those are always helpful as we're going forward in this process. So today is the second chamber deadline, which means that most policy bills will need to have work sessions scheduled by the end of the day to stay active. These bills will also need to be moved out of their respective committees by the 23rd. So we are obviously getting down to some of those key deadlines here before the end of the session later in June. These deadlines typically don't apply to bills that are in Rules, Revenue Committee, or Ways and Means. Those are pretty much almost end of session committees moving forward. And there is actually a little bit more flexibility with joint committees, which is why transportation, as an example, will still be able to move through the session, even though it won't be meeting some of these talking point or meeting some of these deadlines. Next week brings us to an important date, May 14th. That's the final revenue forecast will be presented to the legislature. From that point forward, it's going to be a scramble to approve state agency budgets, identify funding for policy-related bills that have passed, and perhaps those yet to pass, which will need some level of funding to function. Then as we move into June, June 18th is the targeted sine die. Sine die is effectively Latin for end of session. I don't know what the likelihood of hitting that June 18th deadline is, but it's always good because having leadership to try to stake out that's kind of how they build back all these deadlines. June 29th is the actual statutory sine die as well. So my sense is sometime between June 18th and June 29th, we will finish up the session. So there's a couple of key points that we always like to emphasize at the front end of this that are important, and the reason that we have these calls. Your outreach and involvement are always greatly appreciated. Many times it can make the difference between our ability to represent cities and impacts on those final legislative outcomes. We don't always have successful stopping bills or passing bills through the process, but again, that outreach is critical. And without it, we're not going to be as successful reaching the objectives for a session. This also helps you too, as local government leaders, having that relationship with your state legislators is important. Their constituents are the same as yours. The final piece, I think, on our involvement that I think we probably don't stress enough, but which is important for you to understand, is that part of the reason that involvement is invaluable, we're a public organization. We don't have PAC money. So every time we're in front of the Capitol or in front of a legislative group, or testifying or whatever the advocacy happens to be, we're facing other organizations that may not share our objectives, but also have money behind them. And that's not something that we've got. So that good old grassroots lobbying is how we make up for it, and it's how we balance it. So that's really kind of the front end of this process. And as I mentioned, this is going to be a whole lot of listening to Jim today. So stay tuned, and hopefully, like I said, I will be able to keep my voice. So first up for everybody is earlier this week, transient lodging tax bill. That's House Bill 3962 was held. It was lively discussion. Over 70 people signed up to testify. And I really want to thank, or Jenna really wanted me to make sure I thanked everybody for participating in that process. Those who testified in person as well as virtually. There's still time to submit testimony until 3 o'clock today. They can take testimony effectively 48 hours after the hearing took place. So make sure you get that testimony in today. Again, 3 p.m. Actually, excuse me, it's 3 p.m. tomorrow. So 3 p.m. by Saturday. One thing to let you know about what's going to be likely moving forward next week with this bill is there may be some negotiations taking place with ORLA. That's the Oregon Restaurant and Lodging Association, that has not been particularly keen on any kind of an adjustment to how the transient lodging tax is distributed. LOC is, of course, committed to securing cities with the most flexibility possible in this. And for a lot of those cities who still want to continue to spend that money on marketing, there's nothing in our bill that's ever going to stop them from doing it. The whole point of having House Bill 3962 is to introduce flexibility into local government priorities and be able to take care of some of the challenges that you each face, many of which are a result of increased tourism activity, but without the additional amount of revenue coming into the process. So that's an update for you. I think the main point here before I leave this one is you need to make sure that you're reaching out to your House members in support of 3962. This could move quickly through session, and this is a priority bill of ours. It's something that we have been trying to get adjustments to for the last 20 years, and we are further in the process than we've ever been with any kind of an adjustment. So we need to make sure that we try to close this out, and then the way we're going to do it is with that core grassroots lobbying. So that outreach is going to be incredibly important over the next several weeks. Let me move on to Senate Bill 610. 610 is a continuation of Measure 110 reform. I think everybody remembers the work that LOC led with public safety partners last year in modifying essentially how Measure 110 works. So the bill is shifting to an oversight accountability committee, and that committee will be distributing funds collected from the marijuana tax to governments and other organizations to provide treatment and harm reduction services to those suffering from addiction or suffering forms of addiction. The committee ran into some challenges with some poor oversight and execution of their duties and some highly problematic grant awards. We've been working on this throughout the entire session, and unfortunately, we didn't get the type of adjustments in this bill that we had wanted to. Certainly not all the way anyway. So while the bill removes the grant-making authority from that accountability committee, it makes it advisory to the OHA, which is helpful and requires the committee to function like a public body that city leaders will recognize. But public safety was not given a physical slot or a seat on the table, much to our disappointment, much to a lot of lobbying work that we ended up doing. We felt that that was critical going forward, but unfortunately, The committee was not interested in advancing that kind of a addition to their committee. Our concern essentially comes down to, while the committee is advisory, we still believe that OHA will act on advice, and we want a seat at the table, and that didn't happen. So we're going to probably be coming back to this issue in the next session and see what we can do and try to make sure that public safety is included in part of that conversation. So what we're asking members to do right now who've engaged is essentially a stand down. Decision's been made. That's how they're going to proceed. I will say that part of our effort and not being able to have the success we wanted on Senate Bill 610 is probably going to help a little bit with another bill. That's House Bill 3069, which is designated to achieve some efficiencies within the Oregon Criminal Justice Commission. The League and our public policy or public safety partners are working to ensure that Criminal Justice Commission, CJC, remains focused on supporting effective criminal justice efforts. And that's really where the focus of where our negotiations are at this point in time. So I want to certainly recognize everybody's involvement and support for our adjustments in 610. We didn't get it across the table. We're obviously not giving up, and we'll be advancing that concept in the next session. Next one, as I mentioned, this is the Jim show today. House Bill 3883. This bill is one of the few possible vehicles to address complications created by House Bill 2805. The Oregon OGEC's interpretation, this essentially is the Government Ethics Commission's interpretation of a new open meeting law requirement. So please take a look at the Willamette Week article that's in chat that I'm going to be dropping in there in just a second. It provides a little bit more detail.
Jim,
You went on mute, Jim.
Sorry about that. So I just dropped this article into the League chat here, folks, or into the chat document. That really gives you a little bit broader context for our work and what we're trying to get fixed in legislation at this point in time. So Scott, as I mentioned, is not able to take any questions directly because he's actually in an OGEC meeting as it stands. So right now, what we are asking for is for city leaders to contact their legislators and let them know the challenges that they're experiencing with the new open meeting requirements and what you've been told by OGC in terms of compliance. I think we've reported multiple times about the communication that we've had with the chair of the commission, with their director. We have communicated those concerns to the governor, not just in a letter, but in person a couple of weeks ago. We've had similar communication with all of the presiding officers and leadership as well. So this is pretty well known that there are some significant communication problems, and I'll just say lack of OGC addressing some of our concerns with their education of local leaders. So we do have an interest from some of those legislators for a fix this session. So now is the time to let them apply that pressure. So any type of outreach that you have, make sure that you let them know that you would support changes in how OGC is handling themselves, as well as that public meeting law piece. So House Bill 3883, it's is useful. It's a timely vehicle. But right now it deals with some really just public comments. So we're working with the sponsor on amendments, and we've got other options. So please just focus on the issue as much as you can, and we'll let you know in the next couple of weeks if we need any additional help or additional outreach or change in some of the communication that's taking place at this time. So I'm going to shift to the last piece, which is really the work that I've been doing and I'm a little bit more intimately involved, or at least knowledgeable about, and that's TRIP 2025. So TRIP 2025 is effectively the framework document for what the transportation package is going to look like this session. And in today's article or in today's bulletin, I put in a little bit more detail to help you navigate through the process. Our longstanding piece on this, and that you've heard me communicate before, is that this is about as close of alignment in what we had hoped for in this transportation package. And that's built off of LOC's Transportation Policy Committee. It's built off of our communication with our legislative committee, as well as the board. And I think that's really important as we go forward in this process. This is so much closer than I ever anticipated to being virtually a check off on every one of the things that we felt were very important with the transportation package going forward. On the top end, this really is a back to the basics type of transportation package. 90% of that money is really focused in on maintenance and operations. Cities and counties are going to get a significant distribution by the full rollout time, which is in 2032. So this has got roughly a 6-year rollout. Cities themselves stand to gain roughly 170 million annually by 2032. That compares to a 2024 distribution of about 238 million. So it's about a 70% or a little more than a 70% increase over the next 6 years, which again is significant. So in the article today, in the bulletin, there's actually a link on what the estimate is by city based off of, again, full implementation of what's in that framework document. And again, pretty significant. Part of the communication that we're doing on this and why the grassroots is so critical is for us to be able to focus in on the half of the transportation revenue that goes to local governments. Most of the, I'll say visibility, most of the media on this has all been about ODOT. I think everybody recognizes that ODOT has got some significant challenges and some baggage to face up to with accountability and transparency. But the focus that I think is going to be really important in getting this across the legislative or through the legislative process is really on that local piece. Half that money is going into local governments. And I think we can guarantee your constituents that they will see some of that money come into their local projects, whether it's a county road or whether it's some kind of maintenance activities in the cities. A couple of the elements that I think are also important to point out is that public transit funding is going to get expanded in this. So as it stands right now, 22 counties, 8 federally recognized tribes receive funds, as well as all the other designated transit agencies such as TriMet, Chariots in Salem, Rogue Valley Transit in Jackson County. That's the reason why this is important, is it's been pretty clear throughout the entire roadshow process and the value that this presents to those rural and frontier communities, which are going to get a physical carve out of that funding to make sure that they can get more intracity type of travel, expand some of the existing shuttle services out there, and provide more transportation options to their communities that don't currently have any other way to get to the doctor's office, grocery store, or anything else to do their day-to-day work. Electric vehicles are going to be paying their fair share. So up until this particular framework, the only way to really capture the EV component has been to double the registration fee compared to a similar gas-driven vehicle or diesel truck, as an example. That's going to change. So starting in 2026, all existing electrical vehicles will transition into a road user fee structure whereby essentially EV owners will pay an equivalent gas tax for their vehicle usage. This will be based on miles driven. The technology is there, and it's been used with some success who have been part of the Orgo program. So I'm an EV owner myself. It could be a monthly charge. It could be a quarterly charge. I suspect they're probably even going to have an election in there to pay at time of registration as well. But bottom line is, we're going to be able to capture an equivalency from electric vehicles going forward. And today in Oregon, there's a little over 100,000 registered EVs. And if you wanted to apply that 40-cent current gas tax into an equivalent of a road user fee, it would be around 14, $15 million of new revenue coming into the system, which will grow again because the gas tax increase will grow as well. So that additional rollout of the road user fee will work its way into new EVs in 27, as well as high mileage plug-in hybrids. So that'll be captured. One thing I think is important for context for folks to realize, and it may be hard, but Oregon has a heck of a deal when it comes to tax burden related to vehicle ownership. We are at the bottom end. We're effectively the lowest of all Western states. Basically, the calculation that you can run yourself through is between gas tax, registration fees, and even with a privilege tax out there right now on new vehicles, it's not that much. It's roughly $445 a year is really what the annual tax burden is, and that's based on an average mile driven in Oregon. That number is going to grow. So by 2032, it'll be a tax burden of roughly $1,100, but that's really just at time of purchase, because the one-time system fee and the vehicle privilege tax is not something that you pay on an annual basis. That's really just at time of purchase going forward. So even with that $1,100, when you make the comparison to Idaho, Nevada, Washington, and California, it's still dramatically less. Nevada really I didn't realize this until I was going through some of the details, but Nevada has an 8% sales tax on vehicles. So if you license a similar vehicle in Nevada compared to Oregon, it's $3,200. California, it's $3,300. Idaho, the next lowest, is going to be right around 2,200 or so. So pretty significant in terms of where Oregon fits at the low end of the spectrum. And even with the increases, will still be less than any of our neighboring Western states in this process. So hopefully you folks who've had a chance to reach out on this transportation package, we're not going to see language until Friday of next week. We still need to make sure that we're still advocating for it, because I think by the time the actual language and the details start to emerge, we're going to have roughly just a few weeks to basically lobby on this bill. So anything that can be done in advance is going to be incredibly helpful. So with that, we are finished really with the presentations, or essentially my continuous talking, and we can start to move on to questions. So we'll take a look at the chat to start. Happy to take any questions online, and I'll do my best to answer them. So I'm going to go through process right now. I'm just kind of going up through the chat to see what we've got for some questions from folks. Okay, got a question from Lebanon. This is on House Bill 3209. Cindy Roberts, do you want to take that? Just kind of curious where that's at in the process. This is the recreational fee bill to deal with disposing of RVs.
Oh, so actually the part of the bill there's two parts to the bill. One is the abandoned RV piece, and the other piece is increasing the registration fees for campers, trailers, and recreational vehicles that has not been raised in 24 years. That helps pay for county and state parks. We have not been scheduled for a work session. We have also been talking to the Joint Transportation Committee leadership about putting it into the transportation package. So we're not sure which venue it's going to happen in, if either one. So we're just waiting. We're just waiting.
Any sense on chances of being able to get this to
Well, if you
move?
look at it, I mean, two of the sponsors of the bill that we had were the co-chairs of Joint Transportation Committee. So
Yeah,
I mean, that's a good sign, but it's a odd time, as you know, so I'm not sure what's going to happen.
yeah, appreciate it. And there's been great advocacy on this. This is a across the board, pretty extensive partnership, and hopefully we can get this thing across the line because I think there's not a city out there that wouldn't want to see some additional resources come in to help deal with some of the abandoned RVs that we've got on our streets. Next question for folks. Again, feel free to drop it into chat as well as raise your hand. Okay.
Jim?
moving on. Yeah, go
Jim,
ahead, Rod.
Tanya Graham has a question in the chat.
Question on rec community. This is Senate Bill 179. That is another Scott question real quick, but I am fairly certain it actually,
So Jim, our work session keeps getting bumped forward. So there is some concern that maybe with the Fields decision that came out last week, that maybe the trial attorneys are pushing back a little bit on the making our temporary changes permanent. That being said, I've asked Senator Prozansky to see if there's an issue, and a couple other people have said that they're going to tap Rep. Krupp, the chair of House Judiciary, and find out if there is a problem or if it really is just a technical rolling forward of work session times.
okay. Do you think it's necessary to start to push back on this and to try to get some more grassroots contact?
I think it'd be great if you know anyone on the House Judiciary Committee, if that's someone from one of the city's areas, I think it'd be great just to pop an email saying, hey, we're really watching 179 and helping that makes it over the finish line. That'd be super helpful.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and name those committee members. So this is in House Judiciary. This is Jason Krupp, who's the chair. Your vice chairs are Representative Chosen and Wallen, Representative Anderson, Chachi, Rick Lewis, Kevin Mannix, Tran. Those are all members that I think if they sit in if your city is in their district, please do reach out to them. It'll be important to try to get this thing across the finish line. It's actually had some pretty solid momentum and has been well received with any number of different legislators that are out there. So got to get this thing across the finish line and certainly get that contact for that outreach.
Thanks, Jim. And just for everybody to better understand it, it did pass the Senate unanimously. So we just really got to push on it.
Yep, definitely. Appreciate that. So another question has popped up in chat. And the question from Gladstone was, what portion of the previous transportation bill, that would be House Bill 2017 from 2017, allocated to O&M as opposed to projects? So herein lies part of the legacy problem that we've had with our transportation funding in Oregon. The three previous transportation bills that have been moved in this state, and this goes back to 2009, 90% of the new revenue that has come forward in each of the last three transportation packages has gone to projects. It has not gone to O&M, and that's one of the reasons why ODOT, because of not having essentially that bucket of funds refilled or increased over time, has an upside down operations and maintenance program. Cities, it's a little bit different because you don't have a requirement where you have to use it on projects or use it on O&M. It's essentially up to cities to do it. The biggest problem I think for the cities and counties right now, or has been, is just there's just not enough money to cover the problems that you face with your local streets. So yeah, going forward, this totally flips where the transportation package has been in the past with the new revenue that's raised, and why it is really considered a kind of the back to the basics is to get ahead of the operations and maintenance backlog that everybody faces, but in particular ODOT, and not try to build brand new transportation projects that are not currently in the queue. And again, I think a better balance, going forward here for the next 6 or more years. So I appreciate the question. I'm continuing to check the chat for additional questions here before we close up before the end of the call. All right, I am not seeing anything. I'm going to give a quick finger count. 5. Let's see. Question. Michael, what was the question that I may have missed?
I can't remember if you address it. It's someone had to leave the call, but was there a link to the comparative costs across Western states in the bulletin?
Yeah,
I
thanks
haven't
for
seen
that.
it.
Yeah,
come out.
so
Yeah.
yeah, in the bulletin article today on transportation or trip 2025, there are multiple links in there that will connect you up with the cost comparisons with vehicle usage in Oregon versus our other Western states. So you can get the details of that in the bulletin article. And again, anybody feel free to send me a direct link, and I can identify some additional details as well. So. Okay. All right. I think that's it, folks. I'll let you off just 32 minutes after the hour. Appreciate everybody's questions today. We'll be here next week. And again, we try to make sure that we keep these calls focused in on bills that we really need advocacy on, as well as some key updates. So have a good weekend, and we'll see you here next week.